Hi, everybody. Zach here. Really grateful that you're here with me. Thanks for joining me today. Thanks for listening. I am very excited about today's episode. Today's episode touches home for me, and it's really, I- it's, um, it's a long time coming for me to be able to express and share myself beyond my own traumas. And so this podcast is a really big deal for me. One, because I get to learn to do that better each day and to express my truth from a place of love. And I also get the opportunity to learn with you and to learn about myself. And I recorded this episode. This is like, I think the second or third take, because the first time I didn't intend on sharing this story and it actually came out. And what I realized is I had shared my origin story without even understanding that I had done it. And so I'm re-recording with you today because I want to give that the space that it deserves. And I'm really excited to share that story because I think it's going to help you maybe relate to your life and maybe see within your own story how there are some similarities here. And most importantly, so that you can also find ways that could help serve you as you migrate your way out of your addiction as well. So, so yeah, let's get started. Again, thanks for being with me. Thanks for listening to this story. It is my origin story as to how I got started on my path with drugs and alcohol. I'd start this story with telling you that I am, for all intensive purposes, I believe I have a perfect family. I believe I'm very well loved and everything's taken care of. And I just see us as the perfect family, the white picket fence, the dog, the neighborhood, dad's up and coming in his career. Mom is as well. She's the director of nursing. She's highly intelligent and she has an alcohol problem. We won't get into her details, but I can just say that she was being served alcohol at the dinner table. When I was 10, 11 years old, I had to finish my milk before I could leave the dinner table. She had to finish her glass of wine. And she was raised in a Catholic family. It was just the norm. And so by the time she was about 16, she was a full-blown alcoholic. She had no choice in the matter. Her brain didn't get to develop the same way as others get the opportunity. And she was, for the rest of her life, stuck in her trauma and unable to move past it. And her alcoholism and her drug use was a strategy to cope and maintain, and to survive through that pain. And so Marianne is a really, really important part of my life because she's taught me so much. She's one of my greatest teachers. And we learn through love and pain. And Marianne was full of love. And she wasn't my birth mother. She was my stepmother. And I didn't find this out till later in life, like when I was a teenager. So you can imagine as a child growing up, I called her mom, and for all intents and purposes, she was my mom. That's how I saw it. And I just didn't know any better. The point I'm trying to make is I loved her with all my might, and I didn't know anything different. And then, by the time I'm 16 years old, my parents are divorcing because the alcoholism has reached a point in which there's no going back. She's attempting suicide. The divorce is nasty, and I don't think any of them are pretty or beautiful. And yeah, I remember she got her own apartment, and I had my own apartment as well. And I remember I would come over and visit her and come to check in on her. And in her alcoholism, I was the only one she would reach out to as far as telling me honestly what was going on with her use. And so if I didn't hear from her from a little bit, that meant that she usually had a binge or it was a troubling situation. And so I would need to come over and find her and help her and get her through that. I didn't hear from her for a few days, so I went over. And when I arrived, I found her unconscious on the bed. It was a dirty scene, and the dog, Buster, that I had grown up with he was dead. There was poop and pee and everything. It was nasty. It was a very bad scene. And I could not process it. That scene was too much for me. I was not able to handle what it is I was seeing. I thought she was dead. I tried to bring her back to life because I couldn't feel a heartbeat or a breath, and I wasn't able to. And in that moment, I just felt as helpless as it gets, just incredibly helpless. Here was this beautiful, loving, perfect woman dying or dead right there in front of me, and I couldn't do anything. And I immediately called 911. The police arrived, the ambulance arrived, quickly filled the apartment. They resuscitated her, brought her back to life, brought her back conscious, started immediately pumping charcoal and doing the necessary detoxification process, and escorted her out of the apartment and down to the hospital. And so how I managed to survive that situation is that in that moment, I gave meaning to the experience I was having. And by that I mean, I looked on the ground and I saw that alcohol, those 175s of vodka, and I saw all the destruction and the death, and I just couldn't fathom how something this clear liquid in this bottle could cause so much pain and could cause so much hurt in a family that was so, and again, in my mind, perfect and beautiful. And again, the white picket fence and the dog and all the things. How could we, out of all the families, our family, how could this happen to us? And I'm looking at that bottle, at that alcohol, and for the first time in my life, instead of looking at that bottle as if it was a pain or a problem or something to avoid, I looked at that bottle and what I saw was a solution. What I saw was, well, if this can take the love from my family and the connection I have, then I'm going to figure out how, and I'm going to figure out why. And I understand my mother, Marianne, isn't strong enough to be able to come to that understanding. And in my mind, and again, this is arrogance at the time, but I just believe she didn't have the opportunity ever to be able to have the will to say no. Because at the time, that's what I was led to believe. She just didn't have the willpower to say no to these things and yes to her family. And I said, well, I have the will. I can say no. And I will. And for the first time, I looked over at that alcohol, and what I saw was an opportunity to pick it up and to addict myself and to find the solution out. And if I could do that, then I could save my mother. And if I could do that, I could save my family. And so for the first time when I looked at that bottle now, I didn't see a problem. I saw an opportunity for connection and safety and love. And it is so fascinating. But in that very moment, that alcohol went from something I despised to something that all of a sudden had a little appeal to it and started to look attractive and actually started to feel like it could not be a problem, but maybe a solution to the problem that I currently have that's overwhelming me. And I picked those bottles up. I picked one of them up and I took it down to the car, my truck. And I chugged and I puked and I chugged and I puked until I was just dizzy drunk. And then I started driving. I just needed to get away, but I was also starting on my new path. And so I got pulled over and I got a DUI and I left and went to jail and came back the next morning and did it all over again. And I got another DUI and I got 3 of them in 1 week doing this. And I lost my license for 10 years at that time. 9 years in, I did it again and lost it for another 10. So for a total of 20 years. So there's 5 key takeaways I want to really hone in on that story, because I want you to understand why it is that I want you to see and understand why I started my use of drugs and alcohol. And I hope that you can too start to see, maybe look back within your own life and start to realize that there's a reason or a wound that you too are trying to manage and trying to alleviate the pain from. And your addiction is merely a tool or a strategy that allows you to reconnect or to lessen that pain or to receive love. And until the wound is addressed, the strategy will always look appealing. And it's subconscious, but you will always find it attractive, or it will always look like a solution, even though it may now be obsolete and actually be the thing that is bringing you down versus serving you. So the first takeaway is that I once had no desire to drink or to do drugs. And I'm pretty certain that it's the same with every single other person. Yeah, you might have looked at it and said, I want to try that, and tried it and it was great. But what I'm saying is there's a subconscious pattern that's driving you more than your conscious awareness. And in fact, your conscious awareness is turned off when this nervous system safety or survival is threatened. Your whole ability to have reason and logic is turned off. And what's activated is your fight, flight, or your sympathetic system, which is to protect you. So I just want to make clear that me, you, and most all people aren't consciously choosing to do the drugs or the alcohol the first time. There is some wound or experience or trauma that this alcohol actually or drug could help make the experience, help get through that experience. So essentially, alcohol changed from something associated with pain into something that looked like a path towards saving Marianne and restoring my family, which would be my love and my connection. And so the second point I want to make is that a traumatic experience changed the meaning of drugs and alcohol for me. 10 seconds prior to me, but the moment I walked in that door, drugs and alcohol were something I never wanted to touch. And for all intents and purposes, I said I never would touch. In fact, I was the guy that if you walked past me while smoking a cigarette, I would hold my breath arrogantly as I like this and walk past you with my cheeks puffed to make sure you're aware I'm holding my breath. Just because I just hated cigarettes and the smell and the idea that someone would do that to themselves knowing that they're killing themselves, essentially. And so, how did I become the person that would hold his breath and walk by you on the street if you were smoking a cigarette because it was just so obtrusive and nasty, and I couldn't fathom being the type of person that would do that, to 10 seconds later walking in that door and walking out as a alcoholic, an addict? It's had nothing to do with my willpower or it had everything to do with my nervous system and providing safety, connection, the removal of pain, or love. Third, drugs and alcohol became associated with saving my mother, restoring family connection, and ending pain, which is why they became attractive, which is why they became an opportunity or an option that looked attractive. And once the meaning changed, my behavior changed. And this is a really important and crucial aspect of recovery, is that once I gave drugs and alcohol a new meaning, which is that they provide safety, then they looked completely different. And 5, what looked irrational on the outside made emotional sense inside my nervous system. So yes, it looked absolutely ridiculous from the outside in, like if an adult stopped and was calm and regulated and they saw me enduring this experience, they might tell me that the drugs and alcohol look like the answer to my problem, but they're not. And if I had someone explain to me in that moment why they looked attractive and why I was called to use them, then I think I might have given it a second chance, a second thought at least. I'm not saying I would have done it any different, but I just mean to convey that I too am aware that it looks irrational from the outsider looking in. But when it's you in the moment, it's a whole nother story, because rational or irrational has nothing to truly do with it in the moment. That is a higher executive function for reasoning and logic, which is the prefrontal cortex, and that is completely turned off whenever we're in a sympathetic arousal, meaning the nervous system is perceiving a threat and it's moving in to protect us, whether that's pumping adrenaline or releasing cortisol or all the things that are necessary in order to get us to take action to escape the threat. But I hope now you can see that what looked irrational from the outside was actually very rational down on the inside, because inside in me, I was just seeking safety. I was seeking to survive this moment that was way too much for me to handle at that time. So why do I do what I do? I do it because a part of me still associates it with relief, safety, connection, and survival. So you don't change by hating or fighting the strategy. You change by understanding what it is trying to provide and learning a safer way to provide it. Now I want to tell you about some other strategies, other adaptive survival strategies like your addiction, that way you can start to see that, one, it's not your only strategy you're using, but two, it's probably the one that you fall back on most often when these others don't work. And I want to share what some of those other ones are for me, and then share some kind of universal strategies in nature as well, so that you can kind of get a better understanding of what I mean by strategy. So an adaptation, I think, is really just us becoming the best version of ourselves. You can think of adaptations in nature, and like chameleons or frogs or lizards that blend their color into that of their environment. And they do this as a protective mechanism to be able to survive. It is an adaptation. The gecko didn't come out the color of the tree that he was going to sit on Thursday. But on Thursday, when he crawled up there and laid on that tree and turned his colors to the same, he adapted. And that is an adaptation. And he did that to blend in, to avoid being eaten, in other words, for survival. You could also think, and that's like a structural adaptation in nature, meaning the structure or the anatomy adapting to the environment. there's also behavioral adaptations in nature. And by the way, I think addiction is both structural and behavioral. But a behavioral adaptation in nature, you could think of like birds migrating. So they migrate from one location to another to find better conditions for survival. And even, I think of even like monarch butterflies, the journey that they make. And they do that entire journey. To them, it's just a survival strategy. They don't even think twice about it. Now, these are beautiful and intelligent, just like your addiction, the strategies. All of them served when they were created. Do they still serve to the same capacity? No, not all of them, which is why some fall by the wayside. Others get used more than some. And the ones that tend to create the best results tend to get used most often. So let's talk about some strategies some of the strategies or adaptations that are intelligent for surviving that I have used, and maybe you can see some of yours in these examples as well. But the first one I have is people pleasing. So, which people pleasing is really an attempt to maintain connection. That's why we are doing that. And I literally became a glorified people pleaser. And by that, I mean, my job is to people please. I literally found safety in pleasing others to get my needs met, all the way to the point where my career became I became a server or a waiter at a high-end restaurant where I meet the needs of others to get to feel better about myself. Perfectionism, that's another one of my adaptations. And it's a safety mechanism to avoid criticism. I look and do perfect, therefore I'm loved and I feel safe. Another strategy I have is hyper-independence, which is really me avoiding disappointment. So I do it all myself because you can't get shit done right. You got to do it yourself, right? Well, that's that hyper-independence. Overachiever. This was a mechanism to earn worth. So the more I do, the more you will love me. And so if I do all of this before you even ask for it, you'll love me more than the others. So those people-pleasing, perfectionism, hyper-independence, and overachieving, those are 4 examples that I have that I use as adaptations currently that still help me to survive. Now, I am aware of them now and recognize that those strategies are obsolete and that my perfectionism actually isn't helping me. It did when I was a child, and I needed to do the act perfect in order to get my needs met because I could not meet them on my own. But now as an adult, I am able to meet my needs. Therefore, being a perfectionist in life avoids me getting my needs met and actually doesn't get me what I want. Therefore, the strategy is now obsolete. And so I learn a new tool or a new strategy like self-love, meditation, breathing, cold plunge, exercise. Lots of different other strategies now that I have that actually regulate that system and bring me back to inner peace and safety within, causing me to then be able to not reach or desire the drugs. Now, I say that addiction is an obsolete strategy, and I say obsolete because it worked very well initially, and even in some aspects may still be serving you now because maybe we're still in the environment that is traumatic, or there's several reasons it could be, and we'll cover some of these. But now the strategy seems to be bringing you down versus serving you. And with our drug addictions, they can become obsolete as well. And so I want to give you some examples of an obsolete one. And I think of like, the first one that comes to mind are like we have cell phones and landlines. Do we remember landlines? So with the landline, nobody had landlines. We don't beat them up anymore because we don't use them. We don't put them down because we don't use them. We just don't use them. Why? Because we have cell phones. We have a better strategy. And so when a better strategy is available and we become aware of it and how to use it and start to use it and start to reap the consequences from using it, it just starts to make sense and everything comes together and we don't need the other addiction anymore. We start to find that we want these other strategies instead. So do you remember GPS or maps? Remember like paper maps? I remember when I first started driving and I was 16, it was right before cell phones. And so we'd have to use maps to still get around, or, you'd have to stop and pull over and go into the gas station to ask the attendant how to get to and from a certain place. But I remember then GPS and cell phones came out. Now I haven't used I can't tell you the last time I used a map. Are maps bad? No. Are we going to shame maps? No. Are we going to beat up maps? No. Are we going to fight maps? No. Maps have nothing to do with any of this. They're innocent and they were just a tool. And the tool performed or it didn't perform. And maybe it performed well, but later we found a different way to perform it even better, like GPS. And the same with your addiction. Maybe your addiction's working, and it's working because it's removing the pain of the wound. But like most people know, if you stop the drug, the wound is still there and you haven't resolved it, then you still have the pain and you will still have the desire for the drug. Horse and buggy. Remember that one? That's another obsolete strategy. We used to get around on horse and buggy. And then cars came out. Are we going to go around beating up all the horses? Are we going to shun the horses? There's no shame in this, guys. There's no blame. You really got to let that go. I hope you're starting to understand that just like me, this addiction is just trying to help you. And it was probably helping you very much, which is why it's got such a grip on you. And until we learn to help ourselves, that addiction is only going to continue to grow. And unfortunately, because of tolerance, we become used to it, and it'll require more to remove the same pain. And that, as many of you know, only continues that path too, to where it'll require more and more and more and more and more and more of the same substance or the same thing to be able to avoid the pain. And so let's put an end to that. Let's start to realize that there's no reason to beat ourselves up. Let's start to accept that where I am today is exactly where I am supposed to be, and that I am hearing this message now because it is meant for me now, and that I can have everything that I want for myself, that I can give that to myself, that nobody else can provide that for me but me, and that I'm ready to give that to myself, and to know that I am okay, and I'm not broken, and I'm actually loved, and there's people out there like Zach who care about me and want to help me better myself, because I deserve that. I deserve love. I deserve to have my needs met. I deserve to be able to express myself beyond my trauma. I deserve to be heard. And my pain is not a pain that everybody knows, but it is still real. And it is a pain that is overwhelming. And nobody deserves to be in overwhelming pain. So I'm telling you that pain is a lesson. That pain is here to teach you something. And the sooner you are open to receive what it is here to teach you, the sooner you will get the message and you will move on. I love you, friends. I bless you so much. I thank you for listening. I hope you got something from this today, and I look forward to sharing with you in the next one. Thank you.